This week on the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent, it is Revenge of the 5th, 2018. This is the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent. GNT for short. We aim to entertain you with geek news, nerd news, or information, whatever we want to talk about, and we go off on tangents.
We sadly don't have our tangent with us again this week. He's still on a cruise.
Yep. I'm Brett Anderson. I'm happy to be here. And that other voice is the voice of Matt Palmer, all-around good guy.
I don't know about that, but here I am.
Today, we have a special show. We're dedicating it to May the 4th, which was yesterday as the time of this recording, 2018. But before we get into that, we have a random roundup. I think we have a classic movie moment from Matt.
This is true. I had another opportunity this week to watch a classic movie. I came from a recommendation from a coworker. And it's interesting because this coworker, starting about 1980, has totally given up on movies. So his movie collection, and it's substantial, consists of 1980 and before.
Wow, so he doesn't even have anything from the big nostalgic area that we're the decade of the 80s, which right now is totally nostalgic from, Back to the Future. They saw the car in Ready Player One. You have all those, like Indiana Jones. Like I don't know why my mind's going blank, but that's like a huge section of movies that all the guys who were kids then are making movies now.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of good movies since the 80s, but I think he has something right about it, that there is something special about movies prior to, maybe even when Star Wars came out. The movies that were before that had something special about them. It was just a different era of movie making, and it's fun to revisit that and see the artistry and what goes into that. And I think this recommendation came.
So what movie is this? I'm like, well, I don't even know the title. What is it?
Here's the movie. It's another Billy Wilder film, which I reviewed one last week, but this one is The Apartment, and this one he recommended. He said it was one of his favorite movies. He just thought it was hilarious, and it is pretty funny. But essentially, The Apartment is a movie. It was made in 1960. It stars John Lemmon.
Jack
Lemmon.
I'm like, John Lemmon. I've never heard of him.
I think we're mixing some 60s things there, but yeah, Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. It actually has Fred MacMurray. I guess he got a lot of guff for being in this movie because it has some, let's just say, adult themes that I'll talk about here. But I was actually kind of surprised for the 1960s that this was the theme of the movie. But yeah, it's got a great cast. But basically what it is it's about Jack Lemmon, who's essentially a very non-assertive, not really a go-getter, kind of gets walked on by his superiors. It's kind of a jab at, I would say, kind of big business, big industry.
So what's the year for this movie?
It's 1960.
1960, okay.
Yeah. So he works at a company. He's kind of in a bad, kind of low on the totem pole, essentially. And the way he's trying to get up on the totem pole is he lets people use his apartment because they're pressuring him, essentially, and he doesn't know how to say no to people for extramarital affairs. So he sets up his apartment so that people can have a key to bring their mistresses in there from work. And it's an interesting premise. A little, I was surprised for 1960.
Well, this is a different kind of movie from you, Matt. I don't imagine you watch it, but I watched Breakfast with Tiffany's, and that's an interesting movie.
Right, but let me continue on this because it is quite a good movie. So essentially, he does this, and there are some funny moments, and Billy Wilder does an excellent job of painting the perspective of his neighbors, because his neighbors don't realize what he's doing. They just think he's this enormous ladies' man that just always has women over, and just he's that's what they think of him. But essentially, it's just this non-assuming guy that's doing this to try to get promoted at work with his superiors. Fred McMurray being one of the directors of that company. And anyway, Shirley MacLaine plays Fran Kubelik, which is a very three-dimensional character, very interesting. But she is in love with Fred McMurray's character, which is a foolish choice. Foolish choice because he's cheating on his wife and with her, essentially.
Oh, man.
Like, he's not a good person. And anyway, the main character, Jack Lemmon, is interested in her. And then it comes down to it, to get a promotion, he has to basically give his apartment up to him, and then he discovers that this is happening. And it continues from there. Anyway, it's very complex plot, I guess. But
so I understand the premise, and it sounds. It sounds like it's a comedy. Jack Lemmon, right? It's
a dramedy, I would say. Yeah,
okay.
I would call it a dramedy because it does have some depth to it, and it does have some very three-dimensional characters. But yeah, there's definitely some comedy in there, and Billy Wilder nails the comedy on the head when he does it. Sometimes, from my perspective, I had to kind of roll my eyes at the comedy because it was like a little risque at times. But what I liked, and what I'll say, is there's a difference in this movie and movies that are made today. Because today, I feel like movies that are made, extramarital affairs and all these things, it's just like, whatever, it's a thing. But they're painting the picture in this case as the guys that are doing this are kind of the bad guys, basically.
Yeah.
And he's the good guy who needs to learn to stick up for himself and be assertive and, learn some things that way to not get stepped on. And he's the good guy, and he, and so it's not necessarily saying extramarital affairs are good. It uses it to have a comedic situation, but in the end, the message of the film is these are the bad guys, and that's kind of how it is. But it's a very interesting film, and I think it really plays into a lot of the Me Too movement of today and the culture behind a lot of the.
That thought was coming to my mind. Like, the movies of today treat women horribly, and they would think, depending on who you talk to, they think all movies have been that way. But really, our culture has shifted in a way that it's why the Me Too movement has started, because it's all been, there's no respect.
Right. And you could see that in this movie, that there's just these men at the top of the company. They do what they want with women. They have these extramarital affairs. They do what they want at work, essentially. There's no control over these people. And you kind of see that in this culture showed in this movie. And I think it's actually pretty relevant to what we're seeing today. But I won't go too much farther into this movie. It's very, I think, worth your time. I will give the heads up that it does have some adult themes in it with, the extramarital affairs. It certainly never shows anything like that happening, but it's happening. And the thing I will say is that I think in the end, it's a positive message.
Oh, cool. So do you give star ratings to these movies?
I give grade ratings.
Grade ratings? Oh, yeah, that's right. You do the grades.
Right.
All right.
And I think I'd have to give it an A for what it is as far as filmmaking and writing and three-dimensional characters. It's all around a great film. The question is, are those adult themes going to bother you or not? And I think it did bother a lot of people in the 60s. That's why Fred McMurray got a lot of guff for doing this movie, because he plays a dirty character who's cheating on his wife.
All right, so an A. Well, I think we need to get, as we build this list of Matt's classic movies, let's get this list going, and we'll post it on our Facebook page so that you guys can keep up with it if you want interested in watching the classic movies. Because I need this list.
I've had a lot of fun doing this. I've seen a lot of classic movies, but there's a lot that I need to see.
Have you seen? Well, I have stuff that I want to add to your list to see if you've seen, but I think people are listening and be like, "Oh man, when are they going to talk about Star Wars?"
Let's go to Star Wars. It's true. It's true.
All right, so, there's been some Star Wars news that happened. When was the date of this post? This press release from Lucasfilm, April 26th. This is the title: Star Wars Resistance anime-inspired series set for fall debut. So they're working on this now. I assume probably mid-fall is probably when it'll be out. October, November sometime. On looks like it'll debut on the Disney Channel and then switch over to Disney XD. I usually don't keep, because I don't have either of those things. I have to figure out other ways to watch these shows. I wish Rebels was, well, when Disney gets their streaming platform, then that'll be good. But here's just the little, I want to read this little section from their press release. StarWars.com is thrilled to announce the production has begun on Star Wars Resistance, an exciting new animated adventure series about, and I'm going to have my computer say the name of the character.
Kazuda Shiono.
Kazuda Shiono, a young pilot recruited by the Resistance and tasked with top secret mission to spy on the growing threat of the First Order. It will premiere this fall on Disney Channel in the U.S. and thereafter on Disney XD and around the world. So, and it goes on to say that Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma will make appearances voiced by the respective actors, Oscar Isaacs and Gwendolyn Christie. And it goes on that Dave Filoni, who's been involved with Clone Wars and Rebels, is involved with this project, and he even mentions how I think he had an uncle in World War II who was, I think he flew planes. It says it in the article. They kind of inspired this, so I think there's going to be a lot of pilots, or a lot of maybe like it's militaristic, like they're fighting the good fight, the Resistance is fighting the First Order, kind of a thing. But so what are your thoughts, Matt? Have you read
let me
about
just
this?
ask you this. I know you've been a fan of the Clone Wars, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch Rebels as well?
I just didn't have, got more busy. During Clone Wars, for the most part of that, I was like going to college and stuff like that. So I was like, and they played it right on StarWars.com because they weren't owned by Disney at that time. So they could do whatever they want, and I could just keep up with every episode and not have to have a cable or any type of subscription. Nowadays, I really only do, Netflix. And even then I'm limited on the time that I have to watch. And so I did not keep up with Rebels, although the episodes that I have seen I found were interesting. And I saw the first episode, and I saw the episode that had the first appearance of Princess Leia in it. And I think they were doing a good job. It was interesting seeing, that era, that traditional, it's more like the original trilogy era. And you get this small band of rebels, fighting the good fight. Interesting characters. They are interesting, and I do think that some people, like more old fans, still probably can't get into the cartoons, but I don't know why, because I think they're awesome. So
yeah, I did like Clone Wars, how it really expanded on Anakin and made him a much more likable character than he is in the prequels, which we could talk about in a minute. But
it kind of it enhances the movies. Clone Wars, I think, really enhances the movies and did a lot of different interesting things, pushing the boundaries of what you think Star Wars is in a good way, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes they went a little too far with explaining the Force, and they got a little too explain heavy sometimes. I
Well,
think.
that whole Mortis trilogy, was that an illusion? What was that? What was that kind of a thing? It was interesting. I found those to be interesting episodes.
Interesting for sure. I just came away thinking I don't want an explanation for all of this, or But
Yeah.
anyway, I watched Rebels. At least I watched the first season because we got it at the library when we lived in Fort Worth. So they had a good collection. You could get things for free there. It was great. I still need to watch season 2 and season 3 and season 4. I think, was it season 4 that they ended with?
No,
Or was it season 5?
Season 5 was the last one to be broadcast, and it was on Cartoon Network. And then the final season, 6th season, was put on
Oh, wow. There's more than I
Netflix.
remember.
There's 6 seasons. And is it still on Netflix?
I haven't
Or
seen
did
it.
Disney
I don't know.
pull that? I think it's still on Netflix, because when they brought it on Netflix with that final season, I think they were considering it a Netflix original. And I think because it would start with the Netflix logo and everything. So I think it's still on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, Matt, you can. Do you have Netflix?
I do, yeah. Just like everyone.
Just
pretty
like
much,
everyone,
yeah.
because
I'll
it's
have to
the
check it
easiest
out.
platform.
Yeah, it's a good platform. As far as this cartoon's concerned, I'm kind of interested. Like, of course, I would watch it if I had if it was presented in front of me. It's not something I'm necessarily going to seek out. It's not something that really grabs my interest because, first off, I've never really cared about Poe Dameron or Captain
Kazuda
Phasma.
Giono.
Yeah, and I don't know who this is, but
This is the new character.
right. So maybe it'll be interesting, maybe not. Honestly, the new movies aren't as nostalgic or classic to me as other things are, so I'm not as interested in this cartoon. And I'm not a big cartoon watcher, but if it's like a Star Wars cartoon that goes into depth and it goes into some more Star Wars lore, I love to explore Star Wars lore, and I think that's what would bring me to it.
And if the Clone Wars and Rebels, I think, have set a precedent for this, I think that there's lots of good Star Wars stories to tell with new characters. Although, I think a Star Wars series that had the main characters in it would be an awesome series. If you could get an animated series where you're like got you have like the Clone Wars was. Clone Wars was main Star Wars characters. If you could watch an animated TV series that had like Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie, that would be cool. Or a Star Wars TV series that had Rey in it, I think that would be awesome. But they tend to, I think with Rebels, that set kind of the precedent for you have those characters make appearances.
Right, they're more cameo characters rather than
They're supporting roles, and maybe Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma will be major parts of this. Maybe Captain Phasma is the main villain, and Poe Dameron's there as the mentor or something like that.
Maybe. Yeah, it's hard to know. The way they wrote it, it kind of sounded like, well, they'll be there, so watch it, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of banking on people liking those characters, kind of to sell them on the cartoon.
This is This is the new era, the sequel era type of thing. It takes place before The Force Awakens, to my understanding. That's what I infer from this. Like it's their first encounters with the First Order and figuring that out, kind of a thing. So this is ripe for a lot of different storytelling. They can really do a lot of different things in this, and it's also the first. It's not focused on anything old. This is really the new stuff.
Yeah, I guess if we're changing pace a little bit here, changing subject, I'm just wondering what you think of the upcoming Solo movie. It's coming out, I think, May 25th. We're going to have a new Solo movie. It's been a little bit touch and go with that movie here and there. They had the original directors were...
there was a partnership, and they were essentially fired.
Right, yeah, they got fired. It's Phil Lord and...
I remember Phil Lord. I don't remember the other guys.
Something Miller. Sorry, I should know that.
They're
should
the
have that
guys. I
information,
think they directed the big Lego movies.
They did that. They did 21 Jump Street. I think they did, which I haven't actually seen, but
yeah, they shot a fair amount of the movie, but there was some creative differences and also just some weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
And Alden Ehrenreich, the guy who plays Han Solo in the movie, was expressing doubts, I think, to the producers about what's going on.
well, yeah, and I think they watched it and they said it looked more like a slapstick comedy, and that wasn't what they were going for.
They wanted a lot of humor in it. They were always talking about that, but I didn't think they it doesn't need to be like an Ace Ventura movie.
No, please no. I've had my doubts about this movie from the get-go. I like Han Solo as a mysterious character. I like him in A New Hope, where we just find him with this furry giant dog. You know, I like that mystery of him, and I don't necessarily want to explore his past and get into that. But
Yeah.
I will say, of course, they have my money.
Yeah. You know, I've always loved Han Solo, and I'm like, oh, this is the young Han Solo adventures. I read the daily novels. They were old from the 80s. There was 2 Han Solo novels that were pretty fun. They weren't like the later books that probably explained more than what you needed to, and that all that canon's thrown out anyways. But I'm excited for it. After I saw the trailer, I'm like, this feels like Rogue One kind of in a way, but yet it's obviously based off Han Solo, and there's Lando and everything. It got me excited, and I loved Rogue One. In fact, I like Rogue One more than The Last Jedi, so that puts me in a weird camp there. But as it gets closer and closer, I get more excited. So that's a good thing. I'm trying to keep my hopes low, because I know that when I have my hopes high and I go into a movie, then that sets me up for more disappointment. But
right, it's true.
I rather have the pleasant surprise than the.
But you know what, though? You should expect a lot, because Disney has infinite budget, essentially, to make a movie. And if they can't find the talent out there and
they got Ron Howard to replace the directors. They have like unlimited.
If they can't make a
resources.
good movie, then that's a problem. And they're gonna lose Star Wars fans if they can't start really putting something together that's new and exciting and interesting. And it sounds like they're working on that.
And I think the whole way the production went down, they're trying to do something that fans will want to watch. Ultimately, it's kind of where they're chasing the money, because they need to make money. But I think they're really trying to put together something that feels like Star Wars. I think they very much have a tone and feeling that they want to do that maintains that nostalgia, or maintains a certain feeling for Star Wars, especially in the movies. I think that they may explore other things in future TV series and stuff like that. I have no idea what that's going to be like, and we'll have more standalone movies, I'm sure. I don't know what the future will be. Are they going to do Star Wars movies every year for like until forever? Like, they haven't announced anything past episode 9, so I don't know. There's rumors of things, of course, but you never can be sure what's real and what isn't.
Everyone's wanted an Obi-Wan movie, and they've all but confirmed that, I think, at this point.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Yeah, I agree with that.
One thing with the Solo movie, I'm not sold on the casting very much. Now, I know it's impossible to replace Harrison Ford. You can't do it. Alden Ehrenreich, I'm not sure. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people they went through to find this guy, and I'm just hoping that he comes through. You know, I hope they chose the right guy.
Well, this will be the test, is when you go into the movie, if the movie's good enough, and they've directed it, they've crafted it properly, you should forget about Harrison Ford and just watch a good movie. And that's going to be hard, because you can't. How do you forget about Harrison Ford? You know.
Yeah. The other question of the casting, I think they just got Woody Harrelson because he's going to sell some tickets. I honestly don't like that he's kind of typecast in the role that they gave him a little bit. Not to say he's not a versatile actor. He's an excellent actor, and he can do anything he's cast to do. I just think that they typecasted him a little bit. They're taking him from, they're just taking him from some of his other roles that I'm not able to think of right now.
He seems like he's the gang leader, probably a jerk.
Yeah, kind of the sketchy mentor to Han Solo, getting him in touch with Jabba the Hutt, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he talks about there's a gangster, some big shot gangster. It's just for some reason Woody Harrelson's voice in Star Wars is kind of jarring to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think they should have they need to explore and find new people. That's what Star Wars is all about, is finding new people. Not to say you can't bring in a big shot. You've got Obi-Wan in the original films. They got the big shot for that role. But everyone else was brand new, brand spanking new, and it was just this big thing.
It was nice in Star Wars, and kind of I think The Force Awakens kind of follows this, and The Phantom Menace, where they have the main players are all unknowns, more or less, and then they bring in the old classic actors. So in the case of A New Hope, you have Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing brought in.
Excellent,
but they have a whole
actors.
But they basically everyone else was unknown. Harrison Ford had done a few things.
He had done American Graffiti. I think that's about it.
Yeah,
maybe something else obscure, but
yeah.
He was a pretty unknown guy, and he only got that role. I think he was doing construction on the set to earn some money, but
I think he was fixing a door. In like one of the offices. He was like a carpenter, and he'd done movies. He knew George or whatever, and they just couldn't find someone, so they asked him to read, and they're like, okay, this is.
Yeah, Lucas specifically said he didn't want Harrison Ford because he had already used him, and he didn't want him to just be this person that he always has.
Yeah.
Even though he ended up being that for Indiana Jones and Han Solo and all these things, which was the perfect choice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and like Harrison Ford's career started at that point where I can do what he could do whatever he wanted.
Took off. I don't know about Harrison Ford as a person. He's just kind of a grumpy old guy at this point. And
it's just entertaining in its own way.
Kind of, but at the same time, he has no personal respect or interest for the films and the roles that he's played. All he ever says is, "Where's the money?"
Or he says, "Who cares?"
Yeah, who cares? Show me the money, right? And he just always seems like he's super drunk.
He has that feeling come off of him. Although I think he has softened a little bit, but then maybe it's back to the hard, because when he was in The Force Awakens, I mean, it felt like there was a softening going on, and he's always been. I think he likes Indiana Jones more than he likes Han Solo. Like
right.
There is some connection there because he has to. It sounded like when they made the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, whether you hated that movie or liked it, it was
terrible.
That they all had to. That Lucas, Spielberg, and Ford all kind of had to sign off on it,
Shia LaBeouf, like he was supposed to take over as the next generation of Indiana Jones at the end of that movie.
As the hat,
you see the hat roll toward him, and which is a great moment in the film, but it's Shia LaBeouf and it can't happen, and it's just terrible.
Well,
anyway, that's a tangent, but
Disney. Tangent. Disney is working, from what I've read, that there is something going on with another Indiana Jones movie.
There is.
They really want to reboot it, but yet I think that they still want Spielberg and Ford involved. And Spielberg, I think he said that you can't have an Indiana Jones movie without George involved somewhere.
I can't say I disagree with that. I think George, he should be involved in Star Wars. He should be involved in
they've cut
Indiana
him out.
Jones, but he's out, and you could tell. You can tell that he's out.
And he got all grumpy on that 60 Minutes interview. Like he did during the production of The Force Awakens, because he was supposed to be a consultant, but essentially they shut him out. I think
they didn't
that
like his ideas.
Yeah, but I mean, that'll always go down in history. What was George's original story?
Huge mistake. I'll tell you that right now. I'll tell you, George Lucas should not be at the helm as the sole creator of something. He shouldn't be.
But he should be involved as much as they will allow him, as not necessarily a director or a writer, but involved.
He should have some significant creative control,
yeah.
I think. His ideas are outstanding. Think of the characters he's created. Think of the movie moments he's created. He changed history with Star Wars.
Yeah.
The man is a genius.
The technology of movies today is because of George.
Yeah, Lucasfilm. Absolutely. That's where Pixar had its beginnings.
Pixar, you got Industrial Light and Magic, you have Skywalker Sound. People still go to Skywalker Ranch to do their post-production. Yeah,
and
filmmakers do
yeah,
that
watching
all the time.
the Lord of the Rings extra features, Peter Jackson, during the creation of that, he took a trip out to Skywalker Ranch just to see some of the things they were doing. And it's a world-renowned company, and yeah, they did a lot of good things. Anyway, George Lucas is a genius. I think it's a mistake not to have him involved. Kind of leads me to think, or to ask you this question, Brett. What do you think of the prequels?
Oh, yeah. We got to establish to the audience how we are for the prequels. I think the prequels obviously have some writing, pacing, and acting issues. And I think it's because George is more of a the big story idea and the technology, and he couldn't focus in on his actors as well. He didn't have the
writing.
Yeah, and I think Phantom Menace is one of the better movies this is odd. Some people are like, how can you like the Phantom Menace?
Yeah,
but
most people disagree with that.
But the Phantom Menace, if you look at it separate from Star Wars, if you could go into it without any Star Wars, that one is the most well crafted of the three movies.
I think I agree with you.
Because he had more time to work on that one.
If you recast little Anakin, sorry, Jake Lloyd, I know you've got a lot of guff over the years, and that's just sad.
And it's sad that he's gone off the board. He has like mental illness issues.
Yeah, the way people
like
treated him, of course he does. It's absolutely disgusting the way he's been treated. But that's not the point. Basically, yeah, I do think someone else should have been cast in that role. I do think that Jar Jar should never have been a thing. Maybe someone in that role, but not that like childish comedic.
Well, I read the novelization, not before the movie, but the novelization, you can essentially imagine Jar Jar in a different way. Like,
sure.
The way it was executed, they could have had a Jar Jar, but ultimately what doesn't work with Jar Jar, I mean, you can say that's just annoying, like a non sequitur type of what is this thing in this movie. He has no story arc. There's no story to tell.
Yeah.
He doesn't, all of a sudden he is,
he's in the Senate.
He's in the Senate. All of a sudden Boss Nass at the end of the Phantom Menace is like, yeah, you're a general now. He didn't do much of anything.
Everything he did was an accident.
And there's no character development.
Absolutely.
So you can't like the character very much because there's no journey to go on with.
There's no journey to make him likable, and then the things that he's doing on his non-journey are very unlikable. Stepping in poop and saying icky icky goo,
saying pu to a fart joke,
piusa,
yeah,
or saying all sorts of nonsense, and it's just the worst character ever. And George, you needed someone to back you up on this. You had a great conception for an interesting film and an interesting trilogy, but you needed some serious help on the writing, casting, and directing of this film.
But ultimately, where I stand is I like the prequels. I do like them, but I don't think that. But they're not the thing that introduced me to Star Wars. So
Right.
I'm more critical of them, but I do still like them. I was introduced to the original trilogy, and that was my thing on VHS. in my living room in the house I grew up in. So
Yeah. And I think you guys kind of spread that over to us.
yeah, I was like, you guys got to see this.
Yeah. And I remember being over with your brother one day, and I think it was on the TV. It was the scene where Vader's fighting Luke. And one of them, I can't remember which scene that was, but I still can picture that moment. And I could picture, having those movies come out. There's a lot of good things we could talk about. I do want to talk about what it is that brought us to Star Wars. Why do we care about Star Wars? Why is it even important? Why is it something we're dedicating an episode to? I'll let you start with that because you kind of had something going there.
Well, I was 11 years old. My mom had the THX version of the VHS tapes. The first THX version had come out recently, and my mom had a copy of Star Wars. And it was just called Star Wars on the box. It's A New Hope, but we can get into the naming changes at another time. It was sitting on top of the fridge, and I was like, Mom, and I was 11 years old, I think, 10 or 11. And I was like, Mom, can I watch that movie? It's Star Wars. I've heard of Star Wars. I know that there's a trash compactor scene. I think was the only thing that I had any recollection of, but I knew who Yoda was, and I knew who Darth Vader was, as far as like, that's the villain. Yoda's some little creature in it. And I'm like, I've heard of Star Wars. I've seen clips of it in Muppet Babies. What is this? My uncle was watching. I saw a trash compactor scene. I remember seeing Chewie, and I remember seeing them in that. And I'm like, I want to watch that movie. So on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning, I can't remember, I sit down to watch it. I'm like, oh, there's interesting. This interview with the guy who made it. Okay, at the beginning, because there was a Leonard Maltin, how do you say that guy's name? He's like some famous movie reviewer. He was interviewing George at the beginning. And then I get into the movie and I watched the movie. I'm like, that was the best movie I've ever seen. I had like this special experience. And I do think that if you watch Star Wars before you're 12, you can have that special experience. And it will never, you will be bitten by the Star Wars bug.
I absolutely agree with you.
Like, and then it's just like, I have an identity. I have something that I really, really love. Like something, it's just like, I don't know how George made this for kids. Star Wars is for kids.
It always has been.
And it always has been. And if you lose sight of that, then that's when Star Wars is going to start to
The problem is those original
decline.
kids grew up.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jar Jar came.
Those original kids grew up, and then the Jar Jar's introduced, and they can't handle him. And then they get all grumpy. So that was my introduction. And then from then on, I'm like, Mom, I need Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then I had, little did I know, I had other friends who were fans of it too, that I didn't really know about. And they're like, oh, you're fans of it too? And then this whole Star Wars renaissance was going on at the time, because then shortly thereafter, the special editions came out to theaters. Went and saw those all in the theater. I slept out for Return of the Jedi tickets as a 12-year-old. It was like there was like a community. It was just awesome. There was some, and then I learned as much as I could about anything Star Wars, so that I could be like an encyclopedia for my other friends who were just being introduced.
That's great. Yeah, I think, my origin probably starts with you, because I'm guessing you were the one that introduced my brother Mike to it. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Because suddenly we had some Star Wars. Maybe we borrowed it from you. I don't know.
Probably.
We had it. I do remember specifically, those. I was probably 9, I guess. If you were 11, something around there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that. But I just remember, like spring Sunday mornings, I would cook donuts from Pillsbury Doughboy dough, and we'd be watching Star Wars, and it was just this cool moment between me and my brother. I didn't have a ton of one-on-one time with him growing up, but Star Wars was one of those things that brought that and
brought you together.
And I think that was a really cool thing. Some of my best memories are going to the special editions, whatever you may think of them. And I think there were some good things done. Han still shot first, in my opinion, because that's him. But
Well, and then there's the special edition that came out in the theaters and on the VHS tape that came after, and then there was the DVD release, slightly changed, and then the Blu-ray release even slightly changed more for all of them.
yeah, was always making changes.
Well, and I think Jabba looks the best in that Blu-ray edition where Han steps on his tail, but and you roll your eyes. But I thought that was the cool. Like at the time, as a 12-year-old, I got this pack of Star Wars games for the computer, but one of them was behind the scenes disc with a whole bunch of different behind the scenes things on it, and I saw the original scene that was shot with the stand-in actor, who's this guy with Scottish
hairy coat,
fat hairy guy in a hairy coat talking in a Scottish accent.
Yeah, I've seen that clip, and it's interesting because Han Solo walks behind him. He wanted to use that clip. And so they had to figure out some way to allow him to walk behind him, even though he has this gigantic tail.
I thought it was like super clever. And as a kid learning about this whole process of how they made it and put it together, like it was blowing my mind. I'm like, movies are amazing, and how they put this all together. I want to know this technology. I was just interested in everything.
And you're right. I roll my eyes at it now, but as a kid, I didn't care about the cheesiness of it or the unrealisticness of it. Like Jabba would be mad if he stepped on his tail, Yeah. But I did care about that. That was what fascinated me, is that movie making element. Or I just thought it was cool that there was a new scene in Star Wars that I had never seen before. It was fascinating to me.
And you see Jabba there, and it made sense for like, oh, he's in trouble with Jabba. Like I thought it made the whole Jabba story throughout the original trilogy better. But as a kid,
I think it does, but it's just that tail stepping thing that.
No, what bugged me the most was he's like, Jabba, you're a wonderful human being, and I'm like, Jabba is a human. What?
I love that line. I love that line because it just shows like such a snarkiness of Han Solo, right?
Well, and I think that the boldness that he has to step on his tail is like, I'm going to step on this guy's tail.
I just love that. You're a wonderful human being. I think that's just pure Han Solo line right there.
Yeah.
It's just great. But Star Wars has a lot. Some of my best memories are going to the extended editions with my brother. So I think Star Wars is something that gave us those moments that I have memories about growing up, because there weren't a ton of them. Especially after growing up a little bit later and things. So I'm glad that I always have that to look back on. And Star Wars has that way. If you are a kid and you are introduced to Star Wars, it has a way of becoming a part of who you are, I think, and becoming a very integral part of your memories and what you associate with childhood. Let's just do a couple quick questions and then one final question, if that's okay.
All right.
And then I think we'll call this Star Wars episode pretty good. But let me just ask how you rank the Star Wars movies.
Oh,
and
the
let's
ranking
just talk.
question.
Let's just talk 1 through 6.
Okay, Yeah.
I mean, throw in the new ones if you want to. I may do that. If you want to throw those in, that's perfectly fine.
Now, this takes as I blow into the microphone, because this takes thought, and it's like trying to pick your favorite child in some ways. But
some that are better than others.
I'm with everyone on the fan favorite. I do love Empire Strikes Back, and that's the one. That was my favorite one. After I watched him on all, I got all 3 on VHS as a kid. I watched.
It's not just the fan favorite; it's also the critical favorite.
The critical favorite, and it's interesting. It, as Joss Whedon pointed out, it breaks filmmaking rules. It has no ending. It does, but
kinda.
But it kind of like it leaves you on a cliffhanger. So,
as it should.
But I have that, and then I like Star Wars or A New Hope. Then I like Return of the Jedi, and then we jump to the prequels. Revenge of the Sith and Phantom Menace are about equal with me. And and then it's hard. And then I would say The Force Awakens and Rogue One, then Attack of the Clones and Last Jedi are at the bottom. That's not to say I don't like them, but that's just how I am right now.
Okay. I'm having a hard time with the Attack of the Clones and Last Jedi comparison. Or not comparison.
But no, Last Jedi is better than Attack of the Clones. I do.
But as far as your favorite to watch.
Yeah, and I'm just going to like favorites to watch because that's really what it's all about. You know, what do you like watching the most? And that's just how I am. I like all of them.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. If you were going to go watch a Star Wars movie, what's the first one you would put in, right? And what's the last one you would put in? I think that's a fair way of looking at it. I think for me, I have the same original order as you. Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and then we get into the interesting little teddy bears, right?
Hey, the Ewoks are great because actually, if you think about it, they're super creepy.
They are super creepy, and I think they're the first sign that George Lucas was going to do Jar Jar Binks.
You're not alone on the internet. Everyone says that, I guess.
Do they? Anyway, but I think that's the case. I think that was his first dive into trying to make it a little more childish than it needed to be. Anyway, so that's my order for those.
The Ewoks were going to eat them. So, like, if Jar Jar was going to eat
but it was never
our
realistic.
heroes, that would have been interesting.
You couldn't imagine these guys in furry suits really eating anything, except for that cracker from Princess Leia, or whatever that thing is. Anyway, so Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, then I'm jumping to Return of the Jedi. Then I think after that, I'll jump to Phantom Menace. And that's because...
You like that more than Revenge of the Sith?
When I was maybe 11 when it came out.
You were the right age to experience the Phantom Menace.
I
was getting to the point where I was too old. I was 15.
Okay, so maybe I was a little older.
See, I was 14 or 15. It was the end of 9th grade. I had to have been 15.
Yeah,
so
I was in 7th grade. And I just remember I saw that movie so many times at our local movie theater.
The Alhambra.
It wasn't even that. It was Water Gardens.
Oh, it was Water Gardens.
It was Water Gardens.
Yeah, because the Alhambra is what you saw the special edition in, right?
No, I saw that at...
Because that was at the special edition.
I saw that at some Provo/Orem theaters that no longer exist, which is sad. I wish I could revisit those locations. But I saw Phantom Menace at least 7 times in the theater. I would always try to get another friend to go with me. If I couldn't, I would seriously just ride my bike there, and I would watch that movie.
Oh, you'd ride your bike there.
I would ride my bike to Water Gardens, watch that movie.
You have some good Phantom Menace memories.
I do. And for some reason, that movie just really resounded with me, and I loved Darth Maul. You know, I loved seeing these Jedi actually doing things that Jedi should do. Really fascinating to me. So I enjoyed it so much. And I get it that there's a lot of issues with the movie. I understand that from a critical standpoint. And from grown-up Star Wars fans, I understand that there's major issues with that movie. I don't really care as much. I do shudder a lot of times when Jake Lloyd is giving his lines. It's not his fault. Leave the kid alone. I do shudder at Jar Jar Binks. Leave that voice actor alone. It's not his fault. Like, it's all George.
He's actually a cool.
But I loved the movie. After that, I would go Revenge of the Sith. Then I would go. I don't know. I would probably put. I guess those are just more nostalgic to me than the new movies. Critically, I would put The Last Jedi before a few of these. But as far as what I'm going to pop in and watch, I'm still sticking with the prequels, except for Attack of the Clones, which I thought was pretty long and boring, to be honest. But I would then stick Last Jedi. Then I would stick kind of The Force Awakens and Rogue One together because they're good for different reasons. I think Force Awakens had good characters. I thought Rogue One had a better story overall, and it was more interesting to watch. And then last of all, of course, I'd put Attack of the Clones. We'll see where Solo fits in.
Yeah, we'll see. Solo might be Matt's dead last bottom. He's like, Attack of the Clones is way better. I hope not.
No, it probably will never happen. Last thing for the quick question I'm going to ask you is, just for the original 6, the original 3 and then the prequels. We'll say that. What's the watch order?
What's the watch order? I think that as a person who is introduced to Star Wars, you should be able to just whatever you watch first is good. Like watch something first. But I think that if you watch the original trilogy, then the prequels suspense is kind of taken away. So I think if you're going to have the best experience story-wise, if you can get around all the changes, like, oh, this is made, obviously there's differences in the way they look and the way they're shot and everything, naturally. I think you should watch it in order. I've gone back and forth. We're like, no, you got to watch things in different order. Or some people have suggested you watch the original Star Wars, then watch episode 4, then 1, 2, 3, or you watch, where you break it up, where you make the revelation feel different depending on it. So maybe you watch Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, then go back and watch 1, 2, 3, then watch Return of the Jedi. Because if you do it that way, you get an interesting perspective. Like, so you watch 4 and 5, and then you go, oh, now I know Darth Vader is Luke's father. Let's go back and see that his whole story, then go back to Return of the Jedi and get that full conclusion, because Return of the Jedi has a powerful conclusion, I think.
Right. Yeah. My personal opinion is no matter what you do it so Empire Strikes Back is before the Anakin Darth Vader reveal in the prequels.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I care about, because that's such a huge historic reveal. And I think that should be experienced before you really dive into who Anakin, or before you really know that Darth Vader is Luke's father. I think you should experience that reveal and then whatever order you want. That's all I really care about. But I would probably say watch them as they came out. Just watch 4 through 6 and then 1 through 3.
And then you get kind of the experience
That's how we all felt.
Old time.
And George Lucas didn't craft 1 through 3 to be cliffhangers for the next movies.
Yeah.
He crafted them thinking that you've seen the first movies.
Yeah.
Because at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you've got Padme saying, "It's Luke, this is Leia," Whereas if he was crafting it to be a cliffhanger, she could have had babies, but we don't know the significance, or we don't know that happened, or things of that nature. Somehow you craft it so it's more of a cliffhanger.
And then and then after watching Attack of the Clones, you can watch the Clone Wars, and it'll make Attack of the Clones better.
Hopefully. Or just watch Clone Wars.
Just skip Attack of the Clones altogether and just watch the Clone Wars.
Right. There's some fun things in Attack of the Clones, I think. There's some cool scenes, but that's all for me.
He was doing a bunch of different things in that. There's some more like the whole battle sequences and stuff like that, I think look interesting. There's some things that are interesting in that. And that is a historic movie. First, it was shot entirely digitally.
This party's over.
That's so ridiculous. A terrible line that always bothered me.
Oh. Anyway.
Oh man, that should have.
I have to say, for the prequels, they should have been a little better crafted, because some of the things still don't quite make sense. They still don't.
Clone Wars helps with making some of this stuff. If you watch the Clone Wars TV series,
they tried to go in and excuse it. With
the whole Sifo Dyas thing and everything still doesn't make sense.
It's a lot of stuff that doesn't. But anyway, that's well known. We know the prequels aren't perfect. Do you enjoy watching them? That's the question, right?
Yeah. And if you don't, you don't. But I enjoy them.
I do to an extent as well. Attack of the Clones, I very rarely I'll go back to. But
Attack the Clones later today and just watch it for just for fun. Just like, why is this
so bad?
Why is this so bad? Or like, pick out, just try to find all the things that I like about it. But it is the first movie to be shot entirely digitally of that scale. There wasn't, so George was pushing, he had cameras built for that movie. And then by Revenge of the Sith, they got even better cameras. So that's why you'll never actually, they'll blow up. You'll never see like a full, I think, 4K release of Attack of the Clones, probably because the resolution might not be there. I don't know. I'd have to go back on that and see what, but I don't think they have a 4K resolution on the original footage for that movie.
Interesting. One last thing. I'll end with this question. If because we know that Disney is listening to our podcast, we know that Kathleen Kennedy is hearing our voices right
She's
now.
like, what's the next episode on the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent? Oh, where's Eric? He's missing.
We may want to like
Eric's her
expand our
favorite.
audience to anybody listening before that's ever going to happen. But let me just ask you, what do you want to see in a Star Wars movie coming up? What is a Star Wars movie that you're anxious to have? And what elements do you want there to be in it?
Well, for like with the Solo movie, I was thinking of the rumors of a Boba Fett movie and Han Solo and the things that were coming out even before Solo was announced. My thoughts were, I like the movie The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's one of my favorites, and I like George took.
I still need to watch it.
Yeah, I would be interesting to what you think about it, because you may not like it. I may be alone, but other people seem to like it.
I'm pretty open-minded to movies usually.
George took from like a lot of Kurosawa films and a lot of different ideas from a lot of different things, but I see the story of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I see that how that kind of story could fit into a Star Wars type of story. And I was thinking of like Han Solo is either Han Solo or Boba Fett as the Clint Eastwood style character, and I've evolved the idea in my mind where I want to see a Boba Fett movie that's basically like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Boba Fett is like Clint Eastwood. You have someone, I was thinking, what's the character's name from Clone Wars? Because you have the good, I would have that be Boba Fett. The bad would be Cad Bane.
Okay.
Because Cad Bane's based off Lee Van Cleef's character. They borrowed a look from him from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Interesting.
So that's where he has that particular type of hat and everything. Mm-hmm. The way he is, it's inspired by the Lee Van Cleef. That's the actor who plays the bad, and he's the real villain. And then the Ugly's kind of like the goof is kind of like the other kind of character, and that would be played by there's this pirate character from what was his name? It escapes me. There's a pirate character from the Clone Wars, and he's also in Rebels.
Right, I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name.
I can't remember his name, but there would be those three, and they would play out like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. So Boba and the pirate guy are running a scam, basically, getting money from people by him capturing the pirate guy and then breaking him free, then going to another system, having him get captured, get the reward money, then break him free, and have this scam going on. And then they learn of the bigger plot that Cad Bane's after some buried money somewhere, or some hidden money, but it's all they're all within the war that's going on, whether it be a Clone Wars era movie or it would actually be best if it was original trilogy era type of thing. And in the process of finding the treasure,
then you could put in, what's his name, that crocodile or alligator bounty hunter guy.
Oh, Bosk.
Yeah.
You could put in Bosk.
Gosh, I couldn't remember. Yeah, stick him
you
in.
You could have a whole bunch of bounty hunter cameos, but then in the process, in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's anachronistic and made by Italians about the Civil War set in like New Mexico. So it's so you don't watch the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for
sure, yeah,
historic accuracy. At one point there's like a bridge, and the North and the South are just every day they just get up and fight and kill each other, and then the bridge is still there. Get up, they're like trying to take the other side, and in the process of getting to where the treasure is, along the way, Clint Eastwood character and the Eli Wallach character, the Good and the Ugly, they come together. They're enemies because they betray each other, and then they come back together because they want to split the treasure. But they blow up this bridge, and essentially neutralizing the conflict. And you could have a scene like that where like you have the Empire and the rebels fighting, and they're not getting anywhere, but the thing that they're fighting over, they just destroy it in the process of getting to where they need to go, and it just like tells them how stupid the war is, kind of a thing,
Interesting. So let me ask you, why does this have to take place in a Star Wars universe?
No, this
what about this hypothetical story that you're saying is specific to Star Wars, aside from pulling some of the characters? But why is it a Star Wars universe?
Why is it Star Wars universe? Because it's a Boba Fett movie primarily. That's what I'm thinking, and a good way to do a Boba Fett movie because it just seems to fit. You get that whole Western swagger, which I think we're going to get in Solo, like this Western swagger. I don't know if that's the right word, but this Western feel with gunslinging and stuff. Because I like that I like the Han Solo in Mos Eisley where he shoots Greedo.
Yeah.
In the original. And then he's like, and he flips the coin. He's like, sorry about the mess.
Right. It's
flips
perfect.
the coin, and like that's Star Wars. That's a part of Star Wars too, and that's kind of like a movie based off that whole entire type of feeling. That whole Mos Eisley, and I think Solo might be my closest thing to fulfilling that type of feeling that I get to see, like the Western style of that cowboy movie.
Yeah,
I hope to get it.
But yeah, that sounds interesting. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of voices asking for something in the Star Wars universe that isn't Force related. They just want to explore characters in different locations.
And there could be Force characters in here. Yeah. No, I do think that this would be a standalone movie. But if you're going to we need to always bring things back to the Force. Ultimately, if no more Star Wars movies, or if they're limiting the amount of Star Wars movies they're going to make, just toss away that stuff and make Force related movies. That would be ideal. In fact, Kenobi, the book Kenobi that came out, it's not considered canon in the new canon, but it could totally fit. That book could be adapted for the Kenobi. That satisfies both my Western feel and he uses the Force too. It satisfies a whole bunch of different things. That is one of my favorite Star Wars books.
Interesting. I think for myself, I don't have a specific plot that I would like to see necessarily. And I found that fascinating what you had to say. I want the Force. I want people learning the Force. One thing I feel like was missing from Rey was that training. Mm-hmm. Not to say that she won't get that, because she probably still needs it.
Well, she stole all the books.
Yeah, she stole all the books, so she knows.
So she could just like
she's a
look it up.
Self-learner, self-taught.
She's gonna put it all on Wikipedia. Jedi Wikipedia, and everybody's going to learn, and she's going to gather a whole bunch of Jedi.
Sure.
That kid, the broom kid at the end.
Kid. Oh, leave the broom kid alone. He's just a good symbol. Yeah, that's all I want in a Star Wars movie is really, I want that intimate moment with the Force. That's what I care about. And I want that Luke theme to be playing, that musical theme. I want that.
Oh, yeah. And then the Force theme and all those different motifs.
Let me say, I don't know, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think that first trailer, or maybe it was a teaser for The Force Awakens, I think that was a better movie than The Force Awakens. And it really brought the feeling of the old movies, and it brought that feeling of childhood back. Because you have that music and you have Luke's voice talking about,
And you think that there's going to be this whole family relationship.
Yeah. And then it just goes weird. It's fine. But I don't have a lot of issues with it. But yeah, it was a very safe movie. Rian Johnson's movie was not a safe movie.
Yeah. And I applaud him for that. And I think that they are going with Rian Johnson with his new trilogy that he's signed on to that we know nothing about.
I think what was bad about episode 8 was left over from episode 7.
Well, because he had to, and that's because they never mapped out some coherent story.
Snoke was nonsense. Like, where did this guy come from? They never said anything. I love that scene.
Yeah, they needed to kill him off because it's like you don't, or yeah.
Phasma kept coming back. What's with her? Like, there's all sorts of things from episode 7 that I think we're crippling Ryan Johnson, to be honest.
Because he couldn't tell the story he wanted
I'm
to tell.
so excited for him to tell a story
In
that
3
we've never
movies,
seen before.
It's going to be
Trilogy.
coherent.
He's going to make it coherent. You know he
Yeah.
is. And he's a great director. I mean, if you've seen... I haven't seen his other movies, but I have seen the episodes of Breaking Bad that he directed, and I think they're outstanding. But anyway, this is... let me also just recommend on YouTube, I watched the anti-cheese edit of the prequels. I actually
Post
really
it on the
liked
Facebook page so that other people can check it out.
I really liked it. But yeah,
That'd be good.
I think in the
we'll
end,
post that.
Star Wars, we love it. And I think to have that special connection with Star Wars, I think it needs to be rooted in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to start there. If you get it as an adult, it's like, yeah, it's a fun movie, but it doesn't mean anything to you.
Yeah,
right?
and you can't understand this whole excitement or all this talk about Star Wars unless you saw it as a kid. You're going to forever be an outsider. I agree on that to some degree. I mean, you could learn to love it. All right. Well, do you have any other questions? Was that the...
That's the questions I've got. Any last thoughts?
My last thoughts are that, it's Revenge of the Fifth today. Just watch a little bit of Star Wars. I don't care if you watch a whole movie. Just watch something.
Go
Share
pop something in.
Share it with your kids. If you have kids, share it with a young person.
That's what I'm so excited for when my kids get a little bit older, old enough to appreciate it.
Yeah. My daughter identifies Star Wars with Dad right now, so it's all good. I think I'm on the right path, but I think ultimately she's going to not care.
Yeah, they've got to make that choice for themselves. But I think in the end, that memory, like if she grows up going to the theater and watching Star Wars movies with you at the theater, that's going to create this foundational memory for her that's going to bring that importance of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's still around.
Well, it's that time.
Let me just say, bring it on. I'd prefer a straight fight to all this sneaking around.
Yeah. And this party's over, unfortunately. You can check us out, follow us, and give us comments at facebook.com/geeknerdtangent. We're on Twitter at geeknerdtangent and Instagram at geeknerdtangent. Also, we have a voicemail line. We want to get your voicemails. We'll play them on the air. It's 801-769-6668. I said that wrong in the last episode. So repeat that, 801-769-6668. Also, where else can we be found? Any other things I'm forgetting? Oh, email us at geeknerdtangent@gmail.com.
Yeah, we'd love to take your questions in future episodes about anything, because tangent is a part of what we do.
Awesome. Well, this is Brett. I'm signing off. Love you guys.
Peace. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.